My name is Nora Bennett. For 3 years. My family believed I was a failure. They thought I had wasted my education. They thought I had no ambition. And most of all, they were ashamed of what I did for a living. I worked as a hotel cleaner. At least, that's what I let them believe. Because there was something my family didn't know. Something I had deliberately kept hidden. I owned the hotel. Not just one hotel. I owned a growing luxury hotel group. But nobody in my family knew. And there was a reason for that. 3 years earlier, my life had been completely different. I had graduated from university with a degree in business management. I applied for dozens of jobs. One after another. I was rejected. Then my father told me, maybe business isn't for you. My younger sister, Jessica, laughed. You always thought you were smarter than everyone. I tried not to let their words hurt me. But they did. Eventually, I found work at a small hotel. The job was simple. Cleaning rooms. Changing sheets. Checking bathrooms. Carrying supplies. It wasn't glamorous. But I needed the money. So I accepted. My first day. A manager handed me a uniform. Room 214 needs cleaning. I nodded. Okay. I entered the room. And while cleaning, I noticed something strange. The hotel had hundreds of guests. But the rooms were constantly empty. The accounting numbers didn't make sense. I had studied business. So I started looking. Quietly. I compared the booking records. Then the payment records. Then the hotel's expenses. After 3 nights, I found it. Someone was stealing money. Thousands of dollars every week. The person responsible was the hotel's operations manager. I could have ignored it. But I didn't. I collected evidence. Then I took it to the owner. The owner was an older man named Mr. Harrison. He looked at the documents. Then looked at me. How did you find this? I shrugged. I noticed the numbers didn't match. He studied me for several seconds. Then asked, what's your background? Business management. He smiled. Then you're wasting your talent cleaning rooms. I laughed. Maybe. He shook his head. No, you just haven't been given the opportunity yet. He gave me a chance. I started helping with the hotel accounts. Then marketing. Then operations. Within 6 months, the hotel's profits doubled. Within a year, they tripled. Mr. Harrison eventually offered me a partnership. I accepted. Then something unexpected happened. He became sick. He decided to retire. And instead of selling the hotel to a corporation, he sold it to me. I was 27 years old. I had barely enough money for the down payment. But I took the risk. I worked 18-hour days. I rebuilt the hotel. Then I bought another one. Then another. Within 3 years, I owned 6 luxury hotels. And created Bennett Hospitality Group. But I never told my family. Every Sunday, I still went to my mother's house wearing simple clothes. And every Sunday, they made fun of me. Jessica would ask, still cleaning toilets? I would smile. Sometimes. My brother would laugh. Imagine having a degree and ending up doing housekeeping. My mother would sigh. I wish you had Jessica's ambition. I never corrected them. Because I wanted to know something. Would they love me if they thought I had nothing? The answer became clear very quickly. One Sunday, Jessica arrived wearing an expensive designer dress. She threw her purse onto the table. I have news. Everyone became excited. I'm getting married. My mother screamed with happiness. Who? Jessica smiled. Daniel. My father immediately stood. Daniel Hayes. She nodded. Everyone knew the Hayes family. They owned one of the largest investment firms in the city. My mother hugged Jessica. You've made us proud. Jessica smiled. Then looked at me. And Nora. What? You'll come to the wedding, right? Of course. She smiled. But there was something strange in her expression. Just. She hesitated. Don't make things awkward. I frowned. What do you mean? She laughed. My friends will be there. Business people. I don't want them asking what you do. My mother immediately defended her. Nora, perhaps you shouldn't talk about your job. I looked at both of them. Why? Jessica smiled. Because you're embarrassing. I said nothing. But inside, something changed. A few days later, Jessica sent me the wedding invitation. I opened it. My eyes stopped at the venue. The Royal Bennett Hotel. I almost laughed. She didn't know. The hotel where she was getting married was mine. I had personally renovated the ballroom 6 months earlier. I had personally approved every wedding package. And now, my own sister was going to celebrate her wedding inside my hotel, while believing I was one of its cleaners. The day before the wedding, my general manager called me. Ms. Bennett, your sister's wedding preparations are complete. Good. Would you like to attend as the owner? I thought about it. No. He sounded surprised. What would you like us to do? I smiled. Nothing. Nothing. Treat me exactly like any other employee. He understood. The wedding day arrived. I put on my black hotel uniform. I tied my hair back. Then I looked at myself in the mirror. For a moment, I remembered the girl who had walked into this hotel 3 years earlier with nothing. Now, I owned the building. But I wasn't interested in showing off. I wanted to see how my family behaved when they thought I had no power. The ballroom was beautiful. Hundreds of guests arrived. Jessica looked like a princess. Daniel looked proud. My mother cried when Jessica walked down the aisle. My father gave a speech. Then, Jessica took the microphone. She looked toward the crowd. Then toward me. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. She smiled. Even my sister Nora. People looked at me. Jessica laughed. She's one of the hotel cleaners. A few people laughed. My face burned. But I stayed silent. Then Jessica said, "Don't worry. She won't be cleaning our table tonight." The laughter grew louder. I looked at her. Then, the ballroom doors opened. The general manager walked in. Behind him were the hotel's senior executives. Everyone became quiet. He walked directly toward me, stopped, and bowed slightly. "Good evening, Ms. Bennett." Jessica's smile disappeared. My mother froze. My father stared. The manager turned toward the room and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce the owner of the Royal Bennett Hotel?" He looked directly at me. Ms. Nora Bennett. The ballroom went completely silent. Jessica's face turned white. But then, Daniel suddenly stood up. He stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. And whispered, "Nora." I looked at him. Yes. His face was full of fear. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "You weren't supposed to find out about me." The ballroom had gone completely silent. Hundreds of people were staring at me. My mother couldn't move. My father looked as if someone had punched him. Jessica stood beside the stage, her face completely pale. But the person who frightened me most was Daniel, my sister's new husband. He was staring at me like he had just seen a ghost. Then he whispered, "You weren't supposed to find out about me." I stepped closer. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer. Jessica looked at him. "Daniel." He swallowed. I looked between them. "How do you know me?" Daniel's face went white. Then he said, "Because I've been looking for you for 6 months." Everyone started whispering. My mother finally spoke. "Nora." "Mom, don't." She stopped. I turned toward Daniel. "Why were you looking for me?" He glanced at Jessica. Then back at me. "Because your company is connected to my family's biggest financial problem." I frowned. "What problem?" Daniel lowered his voice. Someone has been stealing millions from my family's investment fund. I stared at him. What does that have to do with me? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. He handed it to me. Inside were financial records, bank transfers, company names, dates. Then I saw something familiar. Bennett Hospitality Group. My heart started beating faster. What is this? Daniel said. 3 years ago, someone created a fake investment company using your name. I looked at him. My name? Yes. Why? So money could be moved without anyone knowing who was really behind it. I flipped through the documents. There were dozens of transactions, millions of dollars, and one name appeared repeatedly. Victoria Hayes, Daniel's mother. I looked at him. Your mother? He nodded. My mother is the CEO of Hayes Capital. She believes someone inside the company is stealing from her. I looked at the documents. And you think I'm involved? No. He shook his head. I think someone used your identity. Jessica suddenly grabbed the folder. Enough. I looked at her. She was shaking. Why are you so scared? She looked at Daniel. Tell her. Daniel closed his eyes. Then said, Jessica knows. The room went silent again. I turned toward my sister. You knew. She started crying. I didn't know everything. What did you know? She whispered. That Daniel was investigating your company. I stared at her. How long? 6 months. 6 months. She nodded. Then she said something that hurt more than anything else. I married him because I needed to know what he knew about you. I couldn't breathe. My own sister had married a man partly to investigate me. I stepped backward. So this wedding wasn't about love. Jessica started crying. I did love him. But I was afraid. Afraid of what? She looked at my father. Then my mother. They told me you were hiding money. I froze. My parents told you that. She nodded. They said you had become successful through something illegal. I laughed bitterly. So they thought the cleaner was a criminal. Nobody answered. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was my chief financial officer. I answered. What's wrong? His voice was urgent. Ms. Bennett, we've got a serious problem. What happened? Someone just accessed the company's private server. My heart stopped. Who? We don't know. Did they steal anything? A pause. Yes. What? Employee records. Financial documents. And? He hesitated. Your ownership files. I immediately looked at Daniel. He shook his head. It wasn't me. I believed him. Then my CFO said. There's one more thing. What? Someone is transferring money out of the company right now. My stomach dropped. How much? $4.8 million. I left the ballroom immediately. Daniel followed me. Jessica came behind him. My parents stayed frozen. In the hotel office, I opened the security system. Someone was using an employee account. The IP address was hidden, but the transfer destination appeared on screen. A private account. I entered the account number into the banking system. The name appeared. Robert Bennett. My father. I stared at the screen. No. Daniel stepped closer. That's your father. I nodded. He couldn't have done this. But the evidence was right there. Then another transaction appeared. $750,000. Then another. $1.2 million. Then another. $900,000. My father had been moving money from my company. For months. Maybe years. I felt sick. I called him. He answered. Nora. Where are you? At the wedding. Why are you stealing from my company? Silence. Then. He whispered. You weren't supposed to become successful. My heart broke. What? He continued. You were supposed to remain the daughter who needed us. You were supposed to fail. You were supposed to come back home. I couldn't speak. Then he said, you became something we couldn't control. I asked, why? He laughed bitterly. Because your success exposed us. What did you do? He didn't answer. Tell me. Finally, he said, ask your mother about the hotel where you started. The call ended. I stared at my phone. Daniel looked at me. What did he mean? I shook my head. I don't know. Then Jessica whispered, I think I do. She told us something she had never told anyone. When I first started working at the small hotel, my father had secretly visited the owner. He had offered him money. The purpose? To make sure I stayed a cleaner. He didn't want me to move into management. He didn't want me to discover the hotel's financial problems. Because the hotel's former owner had been connected to my father's company, and my father had been hiding a massive fraud. I stared at Jessica. How do you know? She pulled out her phone. I found these messages on Mom's phone. She showed me screenshots. One message from my mother said, as long as Nora stays at the hotel, she'll never discover what happened. Another said, she must never know about the original accounts. I felt my blood run cold. They had deliberately kept me powerless. But then Daniel noticed something. Wait. He pointed at the screen. What? The account receiving the stolen money. He zoomed in. This isn't your father's personal account. I looked closer. The account belonged to a company. Hayes Consulting. Daniel's face changed. That's impossible. What? That's my mother's private company. I stared at him. So your mother? He shook his head. I don't understand. Then suddenly, Daniel received a message. He opened it. His face went completely white. I asked, what is it? He turned the phone toward me. It was a message from his mother. Daniel, bring Nora to my office immediately. Then another message arrived. There is something she needs to know about her father. I stared at the screen. My father. Daniel nodded. And then, a final message appeared. Your father didn't steal the money. He was covering for someone else. I looked at Daniel. Who? He didn't answer. Because at that exact moment, his mother sent another message. It was Nora's mother. My entire world stopped. I stared at Daniel's phone. It was Nora's mother. For several seconds, nobody spoke. My mother. The woman who had spent years telling me I was incapable of success. The woman who had laughed whenever I talked about business. She was somehow connected to millions of dollars moving through secret accounts. I looked at Daniel. Take me to your mother. He nodded. Jessica followed us. We drove to Hayes Capital. The building was enormous. Glass walls. Private security. Dozens of employees. When we entered the executive floor, Daniel's mother, Victoria Hayes, was waiting. She was an elegant woman in her 60s. She looked at me, then quietly said, "You look exactly like your father." I froze. "You knew my father?" She nodded. "Better than you think." I sat down. "Then tell me the truth." Victoria looked at Daniel. "Your father was blamed for something he didn't do." I frowned. "What?" She opened a file. "Your father didn't steal the money. He discovered the fraud. Then he tried to expose it. That's when your mother became involved." My hands started shaking. Victoria explained. 20 years earlier, my mother had worked for Hayes Capital. She was intelligent, ambitious, and extremely good with numbers. But she became obsessed with making money quickly. She began creating secret accounts, moving small amounts of company money. At first, nobody noticed. Then the amounts became millions. My father discovered it. He confronted her. She begged him not to tell anyone. He refused. So she made a deal with him. She promised to return everything. But she never did. Instead, she created fake documents making it appear that my father was responsible. He lost his job. His reputation was destroyed. And my parents separated. I stared at Victoria. Then what happened to me? She sighed. Your mother took you. She told everyone your father had abandoned you. I felt tears in my eyes. But why did I end up living with them? Victoria looked away. Because your mother needed somewhere to hide you. I couldn't believe it. My entire childhood was built around a lie. My father wasn't the man who abandoned me. My mother had destroyed his reputation. Then she raised me while pretending she had sacrificed everything for me. I whispered. Why didn't my father find me? Victoria answered. Your mother changed your name. She moved several times. And when your father finally found out where you were. She paused. He was already sick. My heart broke. Is he alive? Victoria shook her head. He died 7 years ago. I closed my eyes. I had spent years hating a man who had been trying to find me, and he had died believing I wanted nothing to do with him. Daniel placed a second file on the table. There's more. I opened it. Inside were bank records. The same hidden accounts that had been used to move millions. But there was something shocking. The accounts were still active. I looked at Victoria. Who's using them now? She said. Your mother. I felt my stomach turn. My mother is still stealing. Victoria nodded. She has been moving money through different companies. Your father's name was used in several transactions. But the real beneficiary. She looked directly at me. Was your mother? Then Jessica spoke. I knew Mom was hiding something. We all looked at her. She continued. That's why I wanted Daniel to investigate Nora. I stared at her. But why marry him? She looked ashamed. Because Mom told me you were dangerous. She said you had stolen money from the family. And she promised me. She swallowed. She promised me your hotel company. I felt a cold wave pass through me. So this entire thing was planned. Jessica nodded. She wanted you ruined. She wanted Daniel to expose you. And then she wanted me to take over your company. Suddenly, Victoria stood up. There's something you haven't seen. She walked to a safe, entered a code, opened it. Inside was an old envelope. She handed it to me. The envelope had my name on it. Nora Bennett. I stared at the handwriting. I recognized it. My father's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter. Nora, if you ever find this, I need you to know that I never abandoned you. Your mother told you lies because she was afraid you would discover the truth. I started crying. Then I read the next paragraph. The hotel where you work is not an accident. I froze. It was originally purchased with money your mother stole. I looked at Victoria. What? She nodded. The hotel was part of the original fraud. My father continued. One day, I hope you'll uncover the financial records. When you do, you'll finally understand why I fought so hard to protect you. Then the final sentence. Trust the person who gives you the truth, not the person who gives you comfort. I folded the letter. For the first time, everything connected. My mother had wanted me to remain a cleaner because she was afraid I would discover the old financial records. She had tried to destroy my reputation. She had manipulated Jessica. She had used Daniel. And now, she was stealing from my company. But there was one problem. She didn't know I had discovered everything. I looked at Victoria. How much money has she stolen? Victoria answered. Approximately $11 million. My eyes widened. And how much can we prove? Almost all of it. I took a deep breath. Then let's prove everything. Daniel looked at me. What are you going to do? I smiled. For 3 years. I had been the quiet woman in the background. The cleaner. The daughter nobody respected. The sister everyone mocked. But now, I knew exactly who I was. I picked up my phone. I want every financial record. Every email. Every transfer. Every recording. Victoria nodded. And then, I looked at Daniel. We're going to let my mother think she won. Jessica looked confused. Why? I smiled. Because I don't want her to know she's walking into a trap. That evening, I went home. My mother was sitting in the kitchen. She looked at me. How was the wedding? I smiled. Wonderful. She relaxed. Jessica looked beautiful. She did. Then my mother asked, did anyone discover anything embarrassing about you? I laughed softly. No. She smiled. Good. I looked at her. For the first time, I could see the woman behind the smile. The lies. The fear. The greed. And the desperation. She had no idea. I knew everything. Before I went upstairs, she called my name. Nora. I turned. She smiled. You're still my little girl. I smiled back. Of course, Mom. Then I walked away. But once I reached my room, my smile disappeared. Because my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. The message contained only one photograph. It showed my mother meeting someone in a parking garage. And underneath the photograph was a message. Your mother isn't the mastermind. She's working for someone much more powerful. I stared at the photograph for almost a minute. My mother was standing in a dark parking garage. Across from her was a man I had never seen before. The message beneath the picture kept repeating in my mind. Your mother isn't the mastermind. I immediately called the number. It rang once. Then disconnected. I called again. Nothing. I sent a message. Who are you? No response. Then another message appeared. Look inside room 307. I froze. Room 307 was in my first hotel. The same hotel where I had started as a cleaner. The same hotel my father had warned me about. I called Daniel. Where are you? At home. Meet me at the Royal Bennett. Why? I found something. 20 minutes later, Daniel arrived. Victoria came too. I showed them the photograph. Victoria's expression changed immediately. I know that man. Who is he? She took a deep breath. Richard Hayes. I stared at her. Your relative. She shook her head. My older brother. Daniel looked shocked. My uncle. Victoria nodded. Richard was once the real owner of Hayes Capital. What happened? He disappeared 20 years ago. I looked at the photograph. Apparently, he didn't disappear. We went to the Royal Bennett. I walked through the lobby. Everything looked normal. Guests were checking in. Employees were working. Nobody knew that the owner was secretly investigating a conspiracy. We reached room 307. I unlocked the door. Nothing looked unusual. A bed. A desk. A television. A small safe. Daniel searched the room. I checked the desk. Nothing. Then I remembered something. The hotel's old floor plan. Room 307 had originally been used as an executive room. Before the renovation, there had been a hidden compartment behind the wardrobe. I moved the wardrobe and found it. A small metal box. My heart began pounding. Inside were old photographs, bank records, a key, and a cassette tape. Victoria picked up the first document. Her face became pale. These are the original Hayes Capital records. Daniel stared. Why were they here? Victoria looked at me. Because someone wanted them hidden. I picked up the cassette. What's on this? We found an old cassette player in the hotel's storage room. I pressed play. Static. Then, a man's voice. Richard. If you're hearing this, the fraud has already begun. My heart stopped. He continued. Robert Bennett knows about the accounts. Linda knows about the money. But neither of them is running the operation. Victoria looked at Daniel. Then the voice said, the person controlling everything is inside Hayes Capital. The recording ended. Daniel looked at his mother. Who? Victoria shook her head. I don't know. Then I noticed something on the tape. A date. The recording had been made 20 years ago. I looked at Victoria. Who was running Hayes Capital then? She answered. Richard. And after he disappeared, his deputy took over. Who? Victoria froze. Martin Cole. Martin Cole. The current chairman of Hayes Capital. One of the most powerful businessmen in the city. The man who had been publicly supporting Daniel's career. The man who had attended the wedding. The man who had smiled at me earlier that evening. My stomach dropped. Could he be involved? Victoria didn't answer. But Daniel did. If he's involved, he could be behind everything. We searched the remaining documents. Then we found a transaction. A payment made 20 years ago. The recipient. Martin Cole. Another payment. Another. Millions of dollars. Then we found something even worse. A payment made only 3 months ago. $2.4 million. From one of my hotel companies. To Martin Cole's private corporation. I stared at the document. Someone has been stealing from me. Victoria nodded. And sending the money to Martin. I looked at Daniel. Your uncle's operation never ended. No. He shook his head. It just changed owners. Then my phone rang. My mother. I answered. Hello. Her voice was strangely calm. Nora, where are you? At the hotel. Why? Working. She laughed. You never stop working. I said nothing. Then she asked. Did you find anything? My heart stopped. I looked at Daniel. My mother continued. Because if you did, you should know something. What? Her voice became cold. Your company isn't really yours. I froze. What are you talking about? Check the original purchase documents. I already have. No. She laughed. You haven't seen the real agreement. The call ended. I immediately contacted my attorney. Send me every original document connected to the purchase of the Royal Bennett. 10 minutes later, a secure file arrived. I opened it. My hands began shaking. There was an additional agreement. One I had never seen. It stated that the hotel's ownership could be challenged if the original capital used to purchase it was proven to have come from stolen funds. And the original capital had come from an account linked to my mother. I stared at the document. If Martin proved the money was stolen, I could lose everything. My hotels, my company, my employees, everything I had built. Daniel looked at me. What are you going to do? I closed the file. Then smiled. Let them think they can take it. Victoria frowned. Why? I looked at the documents. Because now I know where their weakness is. Martin didn't know something. The original hotel records contained something far more valuable than money. Evidence. And I had it. The next morning, I made an announcement. I called a press conference. My lawyers were beside me. Victoria stood behind me. Daniel was there too. Hundreds of journalists arrived. I walked onto the stage. Cameras flashed. I looked directly into them. Then said, for 3 years, people believed I was a hotel cleaner. The room became silent. They were right. A few journalists laughed. I continued. But they were wrong about one thing. I looked toward the camera. Cleaning rooms was never something I was ashamed of. I'm ashamed of the people who thought honest work made me worthless. The room erupted in applause. Then I held up a folder. Today, I am releasing evidence of a financial conspiracy that has existed for 20 years. The journalists began shouting questions. I raised my hand. You're going to hear names. You're going to see documents. And you're going to discover why millions of dollars disappeared. Then, I said the name, Martin Cole. Within hours, the story exploded across the city. News channels began reporting on the investigation. Hayes Capital's stock dropped. Martin denied everything. My mother disappeared. Robert refused to speak. Jessica called me crying. Nora. What? Mom is gone. I froze. Where? We don't know. Then Jessica whispered. But she left something for you. What? A note. What does it say? Jessica began crying. She wrote. Nora, I'm sorry. Martin knows where your father hid the final evidence. I closed my eyes. My father. The final evidence. Then Jessica said. And Nora. What? Martin is coming for you. For the first time in my life, I was afraid. Not because Martin Cole was powerful. Not because he had millions of dollars. Not because he could destroy businesses. I was afraid because he knew about my father. And he knew about the final evidence. That night, I received another message from my mother. It was only one sentence. Go to the old hotel where you started. Room 307. Come alone. I showed it to Daniel. No. He shook his head immediately. You're not going alone. Victoria agreed. Martin may be watching. I looked at the message again. Then we'll make him think I'm alone. At midnight, I entered the old hotel. The building was almost empty. The lights flickered. The hallway felt exactly like it had 3 years ago. Room 307 was unlocked. I entered. Nobody was there. Then I noticed something underneath the bed. A small wooden box. I opened it. Inside was a letter. My father's handwriting. Nora, if you found this, you're ready. My eyes filled with tears. He continued. I knew one day Martin would try to destroy you. He believes money gives him power. He is wrong. Then, the greatest weapon isn't money. It's proof. Under the letter was a USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop. A folder appeared. Project Truth. Inside were hundreds of files. Bank transfers. Audio recordings. Emails. Video footage. Everything. Then I saw one file. Martin Cole, master account. I opened it. The truth was horrifying. Martin had been secretly controlling the financial operation for 20 years. He had used my mother. He had manipulated my father. He had stolen from Hayes Capital. And he had used shell companies to move money through hotels, including mine. But there was something even worse. He had deliberately arranged for me to buy the Royal Bennett. Why? Because he needed someone innocent to own the property, so that stolen money could pass through it without attracting attention. I had unknowingly been part of his operation. Then I heard footsteps. Someone was outside the room. I quickly removed the USB. The door opened. Martin walked in. He was alone. He smiled. I knew you'd find it. I stood still. You killed my father's reputation. He shrugged. Your father made mistakes. You destroyed my family. No. He smiled. Your family destroyed itself. I stared at him. You used my mother. She was greedy. You used my father. He was weak. And me. He laughed. You were useful. Those 3 words destroyed the last bit of sympathy I had left for him. Martin stepped closer. Give me the USB. No. Do you know what happens if you release those files? I do. You'll lose your hotels. Maybe. Your company will collapse. Maybe. You could go to prison. I looked at him. Then why are you afraid? His smile disappeared. I continued. Because you know I already sent a copy. He froze. What? I smiled. 3 copies. One went to the police. One went to Victoria's lawyers. And one went to every major news organization in the city. Martin's face turned pale. You can't. It's already done. Suddenly, the police entered. Martin turned toward the door. Detectives surrounded him. One officer said, Martin Cole, you're under arrest. Martin looked at me. You think you've won? I walked toward him. No. I know I have. He was taken away. But the story wasn't over. My mother was found the next morning. She had been hiding in an apartment across town. She surrendered. Robert also agreed to testify. And Jessica. She finally told investigators everything. The financial investigation lasted months. Millions of dollars were recovered. Martin was charged with fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and financial crimes. My mother's involvement was also exposed. My father's name was officially cleared. 20 years after his death. 6 months later, I stood outside the same hotel where everything had started. A large crowd had gathered. But this time, I wasn't wearing a cleaner's uniform. I was wearing a simple black dress. The hotel's new sign had been installed. The Bennett Foundation for Honest Work. I had decided to transform the hotel. Instead of hiding the past, I wanted to honor it. I created scholarships for hotel workers, training programs for cleaners, receptionists, cooks, and maintenance workers. People who worked hard but were often treated as invisible. Jessica stood beside me. She looked nervous. Nora. Yes. I don't expect you to forgive me. I looked at her. I know. I was horrible to you. You were. She lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. I took a breath, then said, I forgive you. She looked up. But things won't go back to how they were. She nodded. I understand. And that's okay. For the first time, we hugged. Not because everything was forgotten, but because we were finally free from the lies our parents had built around us. My mother eventually wrote me a letter. I read it once. She apologized. She admitted everything. She said she wished she had been a better mother. I didn't answer. Some wounds don't need another conversation. They need distance. 1 year later, I stood on a stage at a national business conference. The host introduced me. Nora Bennett, entrepreneur, hotel owner, and founder of Bennett Hospitality Group. The audience applauded. Then the host asked, what was the biggest lesson of your career? I smiled. I thought about my first day. The uniform. The dirty rooms. The laughter. The people who believed cleaning was beneath them. Then I answered, never be ashamed of honest work. I paused. The people who looked down on me because I cleaned their rooms eventually had to walk through my doors asking for help. The audience applauded. But I didn't feel proud because I had become richer than them. I felt proud because I had become the woman they told me I could never be. That evening, I returned home. I opened an old box. Inside was my first hotel uniform. I smiled. 3 years ago, I wore it because I had no other choice. Today, I kept it because it reminded me where I came from. I touched the fabric. Then whispered, you weren't a cleaner who became an owner. You were an owner who wasn't afraid to clean. And that was the real revenge. Not destroying my family. Not humiliating my sister. Not watching Martin lose everything. My revenge was becoming successful. Without becoming cruel like them. I looked out at the city lights. My father had died believing his name would never be cleared. Now, his name was finally clean. My mother had spent years hiding the truth. Now, the truth was impossible to bury. And the family that once called me a failure could no longer pretend they didn't know who I was. I was Nora Bennett. The woman they thought was just a cleaner. The woman who discovered the truth. And the woman who rebuilt everything from the ground up.